conversation about the conversation, which I've only said one other time today so far. We're making a push across the entire university to use the conversation as a platform to share all of your research and expertise. And Eric Zack, University Relations Director of the Conversations, here to help us. A couple of thanks. George Vlahakis is hosting today and put all this together for us. But thanks again for giving us the space. And Scott Shackelford, also here with us. He is a conversation veteran publisher, so we'll hear a little later about how he sees this. Right. So thanks again for everyone for coming. And Eric, thank you.
And thank you. And thank you all for attending. To let you know a little bit about the goal is, one, get you interested in pitching ideas to us, if you understand the pitch process, but also more importantly, understand who we are so you know what you're getting into. But before we get into that, if you don't mind, a small enough group, can you just go around and introduce yourselves, name, rank, serial number? Because I know some are from Kelley, some aren't. So just so that way I have an idea of who's in the room. Lori.
I can start. I'm Maureen Means. I'm an accounting faculty member here, and I'm the Associate Dean for Faculty and Research at Kelley.
I'm Tim Baldwin. I'm here at Kelley in the Department of Management and Entrepreneurship, faculty and chair.
I'm Linda Cadegas. I'm the Assistant Director of Communications at the Davis School of Music.
I'm Liz Rosswager, and I'm a science writer in psychological and brain sciences.
Very cool. I'm Scott Shackelford. I'm an associate professor here at Kelley and chair of the IU cybersecurity program.
My name is Peng Zhao, doctoral student from the Department of Management and Entrepreneurship.
I'm Diane Hitchell. I'm at School of Public and Environmental Affairs.
Cristiano Guaraná, assistant professor in management and leadership department. Probably the doc student.
George Teldors from Kelley. I run the Center for the Business of Life Sciences.
And I'm George.
George.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through things. If you have any questions at any point, shout them out. I'm the youngest of 7, so you can get my name wrong. You can call me a lot of bad things. I'll probably answer. And what I'm going to do is go through a couple slides, but then really want to get your questions to dictate how we move forward. Because the questions you ask up front means that's important to you, and you may not care about half the stuff we have in the PowerPoint, and that's fine with me. But I'm going to skip first to our charter. I'm not going to read through this. The key one for us, we're a nonprofit, and our mission really is to unlock the research, expertise, and knowledge of academia to inform and educate the general public. So if you ask who our audience is, it's the general public. If you ask who you're writing for, it's the general public. By general public, we get about 20% of our readers on our site. We're not a destination website. It's through republishing from the Washington Post, CNBC.com, to the San Francisco Chronicle, to Fatherly.com of all places, picks up content. So that reader is who you're addressing. And we'll get into all of that. That's just so you know who the general public is. We get out and republish in many outlets. So who we are. We're a different news organization. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit. We started in Australia in 2011. And it was when the publisher or editor of the Melbourne Age was told he had to cut 30% of his staff. After 6 months, he realized I can't put out a quality newspaper without these expert beat reporters and editors. So he quit and took a fellowship at the University of Melbourne. And there he met a colleague who said, well, you always come to us to explain these complex issues. You always ask us for quotes. You always want to interview us about things that are going on in the world. Why don't we cut out that middle person? The academic will be your reporter, and you are the expert journalist, editor. We'll just cut that person out and give that to the public. So that was in 2011, and a lot of it was to combat the Murdoch-owned, more right-leaning media outlets of Australia. But right now, they're doing very well in Australia, and that's their goal, is to be a destination website. I mentioned we're not that. But since then, we launched in the UK, then the US in late 2014, France, Canada, Africa, Indonesia, and we're looking at South America now too. So we're building a global newsroom of faculty reporters, experts, as well as a global newsroom of editors to work with these academics. Our editors are all former journalists. So in the business school, if you've got a business story article, pitch idea, you're going to work with Brian, who's a former Bloomberg reporter. Jenny is a former science reporter. She covers science, the science part of science and tech. So they know and they keep tabs on what's going on in their kind of industries, in their desks. So they understand the jargon and they will help you simplify what you're saying and have you think different ways about how you're presenting the information. It's a collaboration. It's not just you give them a blog post or article you wrote a year ago and say, do you want this? They want a short pitch, and I'll show you all of that. And then once they work with you, they'll then talk to you, and you'll shape the pitch. They'll give you the first deadline of the first draft, number of words to shoot for, and that author's brief is sent to you. And that's what you can work on. So if you start going off this way, they can pull you back and say, no, this is what we agreed upon. If you try to go off on a soapbox, they'll pull you back. Because this is not op-ed, it is news commentary and analysis. Everything has to be supported by primary, secondary resources. Every article has 5 to 20 links to it. So any claims you make, you have to have the resources and the facts and data to back it up. Some things lean a little towards opinion. Jan Napolitano, president of the University of California System, wrote an article on why science needs to live in the public sphere, which is her opinion. But she backed it up with the data to say the benefits of doing this, so we should all be doing it. You'll write from first person, based on my research, this is what we found. Or in my book that was published, and you link to the book, this is what we covered. So there's benefits to you that way, which I'll share also. The articles are short, 800 to 1,000 words. We're now doing some shorter explainers as well, like what is a tariff we did. Just 400 words. Just easy, simple things for people to understand. The journal, again, it's going to be a collaboration. It's going to be maybe professional development if you've never written for the general public before, because it's a different style. And I'll show you the back-end system of one of Scott's articles, and we can look at the history and the timeline and everything.
Critique it. When you say general public as well, it might be helpful to talk about what level we're writing for, because I've been told before maybe sixth grade?
Yeah.
Something like that?
We say a smart teenager.
There you go, smart teenager. There you go.
Which is the same as the Washington Post, and there's a readability index
Yep, which is helpful. Yeah.
within the system that will show. All articles are handled by 3 editors. So it's the main section desk editor, it's one of our deputy editors, and then the copy editor. So it is a rigorous process to go through. But the final person to edit, to say it's ready to go, is the author. You're not being interviewed, so you don't have to worry about being misquoted or taken out of context. These are your words. And you have final approval. And I had someone at Iowa State 2 months ago who in one of these sessions said, well, my article, I worked with Brian and it never got published. What's going on? You said September, and we're getting towards the end of September. So I pulled up her dashboard and we looked at it and said, big red block, waiting for author approval. So she did that. It was in 2 days later in the morning email. So we still hit the September deadline.
Eric, is there a definitive publication? I mean, is it published weekly, monthly, or is just concurrent articles accumulate?
We're daily, Monday through Friday. But when others pick it up, it can be that day, it can be a week later, it can be a year later. So evergreen articles we love. Our most read article is what happens to your brain when you give up sugar for Lent, by a postdoc student from Penn State. 3 years ago, 9 million readers now. Because every year at Lent, someone else picks it up or rewrites it. And then her dashboard and her analytics go up because she's had more readers. So yeah, and then we'll get into more about looking at news pegs and anniversaries. But also one thing I want to stress is the post-publication impact. We have a space on your author dashboard to let us know, but even if you let your communications teams know, what's happened afterwards? Were you contacted by a radio station, another print outlet? Did you get another academic from another university want to collaborate with you? We've got great stats that this happens, but we don't have the anecdotal as much as we want to start collecting that. So it's not as much about the number of readers, although that's important, but it's also what's happened to you since the publication. So it's important to know all the content is published through the Creative Commons license. What that means, you write an article that's 832 words, anyone who picks it up has to take all 832 words. They can't cut and paste, they have to take it all. The only way they can change anything is with your approval. They have to take your name, your title, institution that originally appeared on the conversation, and our web counter, which helps us track it so that when you look at every author gets their own dashboard of analytics, you can see exactly which publications picked it up and how many readers you had in each one. And there's ways to use that later we can talk about too. And that gets to the access to the metrics that you would have. Again, every author gets this. I'll show you Scott's as well. We say editors provide training because it's really that one-on-one with that editor. If you're not careful, you're going to learn something. And that's really professional development for many people, that after they've gone through it, they said, I kind of learned something new they never taught us in school. But now when I'm addressing alumni, I speak differently. When I'm addressing a freshman versus a graduate level course, it's a different way of presenting your information. So now, what initial questions do you have? And that'll kind of direct, we'll end up covering everything. But
So I'm hearing that anybody really can submit an article. It could be a faculty member themselves or a communications team writer, for instance, from a school. Is that correct?
So anyone can submit the pitch, but once it's accepted, it's the academic and the journalist who are working together. So if there's communications writers, you can't write it. We had one instance with Janet Paultano where her speechwriter had to get involved, which we weren't happy about, which also slowed the process up by a good month and a half. But anyone can do the pitch, and the communications teams can help you shape that, because that can be the hardest part of really narrowing down. But once it's accepted, it's the academic and the journalist working collaboratively together.
Thank you.
Scott, how long does it take you to read?
I mean, the first draft, it's 800 words, right? So you can do it in a sitting if you want to, hours, something like that. But there's various phases of the editing process after that, which take more time. And on the pitch front, too, it can be tough to establish a relationship with an editor early on, but I've found at least that after you establish that relationship, the pitches become a lot shorter and a lot more informal. And then you have a good relationship with the editor, and you can jump into it pretty quickly. So I wouldn't let that be much of a barrier.
Yeah. And to give you an idea of the initial pitch, this is our web form that you can use, and it goes right to the appropriate editor. So the things we want to know is the story, 50 words or less. What is the story? What's the significance of this? 100 words or less. So we're trying to really narrow it down. So we don't want pre-written articles, and they just redline it and send it back. Or that you're an expert in cybersecurity, do you want me to write? We want an actual idea. One thing is also the key questions to answer are the 4 whys. Why is this important? Why is it important today? Why is it important for the general public to know? And why are you the expert to write on this? And that's what they're really looking for in the pitch. Because again, in that initial conversation with them, discussion, I shouldn't say her name, they're going to help shape, they get the pitch and the idea, and they're going to help you shape where you go with your first draft. And the idea, especially with Scott, who's now written a dozen of these, our editors know that when it comes in, at this point, it's probably 80 to 90% ready with less editing, because he's gone through the process, he knows what they're looking for, and the style and everything else to write in. So the first time through, some have said it's painful, because again, it's something different. But if they do it again, it's much easier. And the rewards after the fact, even of that first one, it has been positive with most of our authors.
Real quickly, what's the business model? Who pays the bills here?
So as a nonprofit, we have funding for, I can show you, about 12 foundations. These are the original 6 that funded us.
Just wanted interest with objective news.
Actually, their interest is getting the research out there to a broader audience. We've talked to some, like the Knight Foundation and others, about who want to invest in journalism, but we're not training journalists the way the Knight Foundation wants to put their money. But these organizations have specific interest in getting research and content in the areas that they support out to the general public, getting that broader audience. No different than NSF on their grant forms have line 13 or 14, what's the broader impact you're going to make? And that's one way where academics, authors of ours, have used their dashboard of analytics to report back to a grant or to help get a new grant, because they can say, I wrote this article
Such impact and such reach.
and I had 12,000 readers in these 22 publications across 4 different continents. So it's a good way to show what they're doing.
So what topics have you got?
So we have arts and culture, economy and business, education, We have 8, plus 2 aren't listed, philanthropy. We have an editor, and then we have a big data and mathematics editor.
Where's cybersecurity?
Usually science and technology.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very broad, and then we have a science, one editor who covers more science and one who covers more technology, depending on which way it falls.
Then I'm guessing that you use Twitter or other means to spread the word, or?
Yeah, so let me show you. Our key partnership is with the Associated Press. So all our content, and we do 8 to 12 stories a day. We're not flooding the market with articles. But every day, those 8 to 12 articles also go into the AP Newswire and what's called AP Newsroom, which each newspaper and media outlet uses. Their editors can then take an AP News reporter story, they can take a conversation article. So that's really helped with distribution. We also have 2 people on staff who have formed over 100, 110 relationships with different news publications and editors around the country. So they'll also push the articles out. For instance, they know the health editor at Univision basically only wants women in health issues. So if there's ever a women's in health issue, they email the health editor at Univision, she takes it. They also do a translation in Spanish, they put it on their website in both languages. Just to give you an idea of the numbers, so the last 90 days we had 22.6 million readers. 2018 we had 93 million readers of our content, which is up from 73 million in 2017, so we're getting more places. Every article averages about 21 republishers. Some may get 10 or 11, but then we get others who get a lot more than 21. So it's getting picked up, and a lot of that's due to the relationship with the AP. But the big part of the AP, we're noticing a lot more print publications. So here's the Washington Post Health and Science section, which comes out every Tuesday. It's not op-ed, it's contributed content, but it's not op-ed. And this story right here is from the University of Florida. So they ran it online, they also put it in print. Again, it's not the op-ed pages. And pretty much comes out every Tuesday. I'd say we get at least 2 articles a month in print in the Washington Post. And that's with no effort on your media relations teams pushing it out. That's just the Washington Post seeing the content. They don't take a lot of our political stories because they have very well-paid investigative reporters and political reporters. But the health and science and technology, that's stuff that they don't, even at the Washington Post, aren't funding as well as the others.
I found that NPR has been pretty active as well.
NPR and PBS takes a lot of, PBS NewsHour take a lot of the content.
Which is nice,
And internally, this is the University of Florida again. This is their quarterly research magazine. They republished it for their board of trustees, for their alumni, and for others in research. This content is up to you on how to use it as well. Creative Commons, you can use it. If you're published in Time Magazine, you're published in Time Magazine. It's not always the conversation. They ran it in Time Magazine. Where they got it from, it doesn't change.
Yeah, that's the reason I have an author profile on the World Economic Forum now, is because they republish all these.
Yeah, World Economic Forum is taking a lot of content, which is a surprise. And so our goal, again, is we want to inform the general public. So we want Bangor, Maine, we want Kokomo Tribune, we want San Francisco Chronicle. A few weeks ago, we had our first pickup in FoxNews.com. Now, our editors kind of rolled their eyes, but from our mission standpoint, we want to reach
A lot of readers.
a lot of people with fact, research-based articles. It's very important that we hit not just the coast, but we also get Middle America and we get Fox News as well. And I don't know why our media relations person thought I should take this, maybe to remind me to tell people it's a Fox News pen that he got. He gave to me.
Do it this way.
So every author also gets your own page where you can also say you're interested in being contacted for media inquiries or anything like that. Shows all your articles. So here are Scott's 12 articles that he wrote. And through here we can visit the author dashboard. So every author gets their individual dashboard of analytics. This is the one you just wrote a few days ago. It has 5,200 readers so far. The comments received are just comments on our website. If it gets republished on the Washington Post, we can't go into their firewall and grab those.
I love how it breaks it down by country there too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so you can see where you published, and then here you go and you can see all the different places so far. And if you click on it, if you want record, here it is on quiz.org. So you can see the article.
Who deals with getting permissions for the photographs?
So
Luckily not us. Not the author.
yeah, a lot of it is with our relationship with the AP. So we get those, we get a certain amount we get to use through the AP, and then otherwise it's all our editors take care of that. And again, whether it's online and print, whichever pubphys.org or GCN, iAfrican, it's the same article, same words. You're not allowed to make changes without your approval. And that's the glory of this. If you do an op-ed, you're pushing one op-ed to one publication. Where here, it's not opinion, slight opinion. It's news commentary and analysis that goes out to a huge network for them to pick it up.
Can I just add something there?
Yep.
You know, most of those are individual outlets, but even then in there I see the Lee newspaper chain. So that would represent probably several, almost on top of that. And of course he got picked up by the CNL Post-Intelligencer, but so there can be an amplification if he gets picked up by a news organization such as that.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, here are these are the top 5 republishers we've had, but then you get to a much longer list. So besides Lee, we have community newspaper holdings, also Tegna and Meredith Broadcasting. They operate the local affiliate news stations' websites. So Fox 5 Pittsburgh, I'm going to make this up now, is owned by Tegna. Tucson 22 ABC is owned by Meredith. So they run the local websites. They have all the local information that the news that city has, the news team is putting out, but then they also take our content. And I say that because I use my in-laws as an example. They live in Western Pennsylvania. If it's not in the Sunday Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the Daily Butler Eagle, or the Fox 5 Pittsburgh News or their station, their website, they're not getting the content because that's where they get their information from. But because they want what's going on locally in their news, they go to the fox5.com website, which is run by Tegna or Meredith. So it's a way to get the content, again, to much broader audiences. I think Tegna owns 42, runs 42 local affiliate stations, and I think Meredith is 49. What other questions?
What are your competitors?
That's a good question. I'm not sure yet. You know, someone talked about ProPublica, but that's a little different than what they're doing with research and everything in journalism. We haven't hit any yet, which doesn't mean they couldn't just pop up. We know that others are, you know, the more we grow, there's obviously people that are going to want to do it.
I see more specialized competitors, like the Monitor for psychology, for example, HBS blog for business, but not as an aggregator that's YouTube.
Yeah, and that's why the relationship with the Associated Press really helps. But also the Association of American Geographers is now a supporter of ours because they want to get their faculty, their members, information and opportunities to get their expertise out to the general public. We also now have 4 scholarly presses as partners of ours. Johns Hopkins Press, MIT, Yale, and Princeton Press. And the reason why is Hopkins first came to us. They had 8 of their book authors writing articles with us, and all 8 of them saw an increase in book sales right afterwards. So they said, wait, what is this? We got to get more people involved because it does help the book sales. While we're talking about the post-publication impact, I'll share this with you. So we did a survey in last July, of about 2,000 authors. We got 452 responses, so a pretty good response. We asked them basically these questions: what happened since they published? On the right side, we consider that more the personal branding. If you want to get your name out there, do more TV interviews, newsprint interviews, write articles, that's the right side. Over half were interviewed by radio stations after they published an article. We had one at the University of Virginia who probably got about 8,000 or 9,000 readers of his article. But the New York Times read it, contacted him, and asked him to do an op-ed for them, which the New York Times isn't taking our content. They won't, but they're obviously combing it and then looking for good people to write op-eds. We had just under 7% who got book proposals and book deals out of this. I know two that Harvard Press contacted and said, hey, this was great. Could you write a full book for us? On the other side is the more academic side. So 43% were approached for an academic collaboration. Someone at IU writes an article, someone at UCLA reads it and says, hey, I'm working on something similar. We want to collaborate. There's new research opportunities, new funding opportunities. 31% saw an increase in their scholarly articles. So their H-index or altmetric scores went up after they wrote with us, because they're citing in my research and then citing a paper or their journal article. People are clicking on those links and then reading more. A lot now, and this will probably increase this next year, 23% using the article, using their dashboard of metrics to get grants or to report back on grant funding. And the one that surprised us is 14% said they influenced a decision maker. I know one at Michigan State University who wrote an article about cell phones and tracking on cell phones, and got a congressional aide and the state legislator contacted them, they interviewed them, and then their congressperson used that on the state floor to introduce new policy that they should do. So that's the other thing, that if you write for us, keep that in mind. And then on the author dashboard, there's a place where we ask, what's happened after writing this article. The reason I like to share. So this is the same professor at the University of Florida who wrote this article. It was also in their research magazine. I'm going to show her dashboard first. So I like this one because she got 360,000 readers of her article in English. It got picked up by the Conversation France, translated to French, because she got another 66,000 readers of the French version. But she also shared all these post-publication impact. So this was fatherly.com, which we never heard of until she posted this. And they've taken a lot more of our content, interviewed her. This is the Gainesville Sun, her own local newspaper, called to interview her. They couldn't take the full article, so they interviewed her, got some quotes, took some excerpts on her approval, and republished the article under that reporter's name. They still mentioned the full article and where the original was, but a much smaller article. But it was a way for her to even reach her local newspaper, which had no idea what she was doing in her research right there. This is Parent Magazine interviewed her. Calgary Today, a radio station in Calgary, Canada, called to interview her. There's another one that's Sabado Magazine. This is Washington Post. Washington Post wanted the picture. This is actually her daughter that's in the picture. And then the last one is Sabado Magazine in Portugal. Oh, that's Tampa Bay CBS, so even a semi-local interview for television. Trust me, Sabado Magazine also in Portugal interviewed her too, so she got international coverage.
I did an interview to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation after one of those. So I'm sorry for not updating the site. I'll do that now. I forgot about the post-engagement survey there.
So we can also, I don't know how long this one took, but we'll go into
I think it was relatively quick.
So this is the backend system. You can upload the first draft in here, and then you can work on it simultaneously with the editor. Our State of the Union first article, somewhat was pre-written, but then they stayed up and the editor and the academic finished it, so it was ready to go the next morning. Then we did a couple, 2 or 3 days later, based on what was said and more about certain issues. So here's the readability index. If it's green, which is 80 or higher, that means it's readable. So it's less jargon. It's why use 4 words when 1 word will do, things like that. If it's yellow, we've let some yellow ones in the high 70s pass, because there's just no other way to say what you need to say. one of the things when we say also, trust the editor, I've heard complaints like, there's they cut it down to 1 or 2 sentences per paragraph. And I need this, it cuts the flow, I need 8 or 9 sentences. Well, we know that 50% of our readers read it on mobile devices. And on mobile devices, you can't have 8 or 9 sentence paragraphs. You have 1 to 3 max.
What percentage is that again?
It's over 50%. I think it's like 51.5 that read it. So that's why if they insert a paragraph break, there's a reason for their madness. It's again looking at the audience and where it's being read. And then here's the history. So this one didn't have a lot of back and forth. That's because Scott's become a pro at this. But everything is date and time stamped. So you can see exactly who touched it and when. And these don't always mean it's a day apart. This is just, let's see, February 6th. One editor looked at 10:19 a.m. So he worked on it for a couple hours. That doesn't mean it's like, that's 5 days worth. That's just a couple hours.
Boy, the content really changed.
So January 23rd to published on the 12th. So you're talking 3 weeks.
Sometimes it's faster.
Yeah, and it all depends on the content and if there's a news hook,
Yeah.
then it's got to be out. Pitch us an idea 5 weeks before Father's Day, but you don't finish it till the week after. It's not relevant as much anymore.
Yeah.
So that's the thing tell you to look at what the news hook is. And it can be quirky things. We did one on the 50-year anniversary of the Intel microchip. What it was, what it meant back then, where we're going, where they see the technology. We did one, I think it's on the word. So, Prince Philip was in a car accident, rolled his car at 97 years old, he was still driving. Ends up there's a professor of geriatrics at the Florida State University Center for Successful Longevity. Wrote an article about the aged and driving. But some of our most read articles are more the curious ones. So think also what the news hook is fine, but what's the story? And is there a different way to present your information? So we had a microbiologist write a very successful article about the science behind the 5-second rule. If you drop food, what really goes out? I'll tell you what they found is if it's a clean surface, it can sit there for a long time. It's about the surface and not everything else. And I thought carpet would have been the worst, but it's not. It's tile or wood. Flooring is the worst. It caught me by surprise because I was telling everyone, no, it's like shag carpeting, it's got to be the worst. But again, it's about how clean it is, not the time it's on there.
Perhaps one of the reasons that you're growing so fast is because we're so tired of fake news. And you're going to the source of the opposite of fake news. Evidence based.
Yeah, and we didn't plan the timing when we were first launched in 2011, even in the US in 2014. Things didn't really ramp up fake news until later in 2015. So it's worked out well for us. But it's also because we're going right to the experts who know research. We're presenting, you don't have to present your own research as well. You can present, as long as whatever you're claiming is backed up by research and the data, you can pull that in. Who does that better than academics? You know how to find the information.
Have you got any grief on any articles being, contrived or, made up or not supported?
No, the funniest one is a very successful article when I think it was 3 years ago, there was this trend of clowns hanging out in forests or something, and then a year later, the movie It came out about, I didn't see it, but it's apparently about Stephen King and clowns. And we had someone write about why clowns freak us out so much. He got some hate emails from clowns. He said that's not a fair take, and not all clowns are scary or whatever. So someone from the clown profession. And part of it is when you have to be affiliated with a college or university to write with us. So IBM wanted to support us, but then they wanted their Watson Institute research scientists to then be able to write for us. And we just couldn't, we didn't want to step into that and where that might lead and where they would write about.
So a prerequisite, you've got to have a college affiliation.
Yep. There's been a handful of authors who are research scientists at a couple government agencies that we've allowed, but it's really 98% are academics or research scientists at a college university. Now, you don't have to have a PhD. We've had a dean of students. We've had business school professors who only have an MBA and not a PhD who've been able to write. But you have to be affiliated. And you have to write about your expertise. You have to stay in your lane. So if you're an accounting professor, we're not going to let you talk about the state of college athletics unless it's maybe the money or something behind something. But we're not doing investigative journalism here. We're not breaking news. It's reactive to the news cycle. It's setting the news agenda and why people should know about what you're doing.
I think it's a fun exercise. My little silo, we write 20,000 word larger articles that are really dense. And maybe, if we're lucky, a couple hundred people read them. But this thing, if you distill it down to a essence and 1,000 words, at least you get the core idea out there. So it's a fun exercise to really make sure that you're hitting the key points in your own writing.
I think it's a healthy place to start.
So, for me, it's fun. I have a journalism background, I did science journalism in undergrad, so I always kind of enjoyed this type of thing anyway. And frankly, it has led to some other opportunities, right? So whether it's, being invited to be, a guest speaker, that's happened, doing interviews with NPR, I mentioned. I've been on TV a couple times for different outlets. And you never know where it might kind of lead to, right? So it's just a nice way to, I think, just engage and show how what you're doing, ideally shouldn't matter.
I can even see, I can even see the inversion. I push our faculty. There's a big push to go to animated videos and other ways to make research more accessible. But so often the implications, the things that would be a biggest grab for this audience are afterthoughts. You did a piece of research, could you put a little practical implication, some on the back end? I say, what if you inverted that? Before you started the research, you said, is there a conversation article in this? Before we even start. And if there's not, is it really something that would be worthy of the time and intellect to put forward? It's kind of what would be the 800 words. It's kind of Mark Twain, if I had more time, I'd write a shorter letter.
That's right.
The problem with that thinking, too, is that forget that there's an awful lot that comes out of our research that we don't predict.
And if you have an article coming out or a book coming out, we honor any embargoes. And what we would suggest is when you know what's coming out, pitch an idea to write an article because it's going to reach a completely different audience that may bring attention to both. So it's part of your PR blitz, for lack of a better phrase, what your media relations team's already doing, but then also add this to it.
Are we allowed? Can we edit the article after it's published or something?
Once it's published, it's done. And so we don't like to put stats, like if we're not, again, breaking the news, a hurricane hit, 20 people died. Because if we write that, then a week later, now it's 25 or whatever. So we have recapped articles that we've used a year later. So if it's basically still the research is valid and it's still talking about something on gun control, it may say, instead of the Las Vegas shooting, unfortunately now it's for the Aurora shooting, and then talk about it. So we've recapped them and then republished them. We'll also look back, and for Valentine's Day, we did, I think, 13 stories, 6 new ones, and 7 we just got from as way back as 2015. So we also republished them on our site, which means it gets picked up again by a whole new group of people, especially the earlier articles, because we didn't have the AP relationship until January 1 of 2017. So there's new opportunity for people.
As you saw, though, you have a lot of bites at the apple before it goes live. So if you're going to have it with the first or second round, you'll have plenty of chances to revive.
Well,
you get the final approval.
The reason I asked that question is I was thinking if something's like in the press or whatever, you push that out, and then you update that link to wherever it does get published.
If there's we've seen that where it says, my book will be coming out, and then when they click on the link, it's now the fresh link. Some link to where it will be, because some of the sites actually have that. But so a correction to a link like that we can easily do.
For what it's worth, too, I did that whole journey you described. I started off pitching individual op-eds back in grad school. There's different outlets. I remember Berkeley had an op-ed project back in the day. And you worked, you got some hits, but it took a lot of effort to actually get something in the Chronicle or the Washington Post or whatever. So I wound up going to just publishing with one outlet. I did Huffington Post for a few years. I had a Christian Science Monitor for a few years, and that was fine. You know, it's so cool because how else are you going to get into half a dozen cool places like Slate, you name it, with one bite at the apple here. So anyway, that's why I keep coming back to it. I think it's a nice improvement of what we
Well,
have.
and you or your media relations teams, you can track to see where it's going. And if it hasn't been picked up by someone yet, you can then pitch this article yourselves.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's
The
nothing
word that
prohibiting
is out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, again, it's not an op-ed, and then
Mhm.
if you tell them, oh, this was, you can get it through your AP feed too, because that might make it easier for them. And one of the great, go ahead.
I have a question for Scott. You know, we'd like to get more of your peers involved in doing this.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about when you first did it, when I first approached you,
Mm-hmm.
and then that led you to, now you've got your own relationship. I don't even, you tell me when you're publishing things now.
Mm-hmm.
How did that, can you tell us about that transition, how you overcame maybe the initial
Mhm.
reticence to do it, and why it's so important to you today?
Yeah, I mean, so the analytics, this dashboard, I think was one of the selling points, right? Because usually when you write these things, they kind of go out in the ether, and you have no real idea how many people that reached and how they engaged with it. So I really like being actually, and again, it's not comprehensive, but you can track decently what impact this has, right? So that was fun. So that kind of got me into, I took the red pill kind of in that way, right? But then, from there I kept coming back because it gets faster and easier. I didn't do as many initially in the early stages because, each round of edits took a little while. And if it's a busy week, I have an idea, but I don't always have, I didn't have the inclination quite as much. But now, if you can churn it out in an hour, then it's great. And if it reaches, 10, 20, 30,000 people, that's pretty neat, right? So the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the bigger impact. That's why we're a public university, right? We got to get these ideas out there. So, as far as the ways to entice faculty, that's always easier said than done. I don't know. I don't have a magic solution there. I think showing them stuff like this to see what the impact looks like, I think that could be good. You could think about doing some internal incentives. Maybe we could have, because we have different, mini little grants when you do something for the first time, you know what I mean? So maybe there could be like a little startup, hey, you know what? Here's a couple $100 for doing it, and then it's a sliding scale each time, So it wouldn't have to be anything major, but that might help hook a few more people too. Anyway, yeah. There's no one size fits all answer there, but I would suggest just throwing a lot of things at the wall and seeing what sticks.
And I'll let you know, so,
and getting grad students involved too, because that's been really helpful. So if you have a co-author thing that you're trying to help establish a grad student or a postdoc, then that's really fun. That gets their name out there as well.
Well, postdocs can write on their own.
Mm-hmm.
PhD students has to be on their area of study.
Yeah.
Where you can cover a lot more things on cybersecurity now
Mm-hmm.
than when you first started. So we
Yeah.
do limit PhD students to that. But
Totally.
postdocs also, again, the most read articles by postdocs.
Yeah. And Jeff was really nice. He let me even mention an undergraduate who was able to help out with something. So I was able to mention her by name and then link to her LinkedIn profile page. And that was nice.
Yeah. So undergraduate or regular graduate students would have to be co-authored. And you can co-author with others outside of the university or the country.
Yeah.
If you've got a colleague or a peer at the University of Dublin, you can co-author.
Yeah, that one, the next one down was actually from somebody at Australia National University that I co-authored with.
That's the one that
now. Yeah.
Second biggest hit was PBS.
Yeah.
What other questions can we answer? Either Scott or I.
So when did you start doing
I don't remember. I have a 6-month-old now, so everything's very blurry. Last year, was it?
It's like 2017.
2 years, oh my goodness, look at this, okay.
Almost 2 years on the dot. Was your
All
first
right.
article.
I had that exactly 2 years ago, Diane, is the answer. Yeah, wow, that's incredible.
Picture.
Some of this stuff is fun. Like, I haven't looked back at these for a while now. But like, is it time for a Cyber Peace Corps thing? That didn't get picked up specifically in the Wall Street Journal, but the journal contacted me and they ran like an excerpt of the piece from it. So I need to update this stuff. But it's like each of those has a fun little, afterthought or story, and that reinforces itself over time, right? So that's why you keep going back.
You can even see, initially it got 15,000 readers, then it kind of falls off, and right there's a little spike from the last 3,000 readers.
Yeah, exactly.
As a reader, you can choose your writer. So to get an update, so let's say I like Scott, okay, and I go there and like Scott Okay, so every time that Scott sends a new link, a new article, I get a message. So I will go there and read Scott's article, new article.
You're saying that hypothetically, is that?
Is that possible or no?
It isn't, but I like the idea.
Yeah.
I'd be able to follow.
Yeah, search on her writers, if there's anything about, him or her, I'd like to see it. Ooh, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Because it also might get authors to then say, okay, I need to write one.
And then you align interests. Okay, so I am the audience, I like what Scott's do, then I go there and just follow Scott's.
That's a good call.
And I will tell you, so even if, just because you pitch an idea doesn't mean it's accepted. You know, the editors have editorial independence. But what they should be doing is also giving you reasons on why it wasn't accepted, and opportunities even now we're offering, if you want more conversations, you can talk to one of our deputy editors. Say, okay, I pitched this, it wasn't accepted, you know, what do you suggest, here's what I'm doing. So that way, you know, maybe the second time it is accepted. Because sometimes they're rejected because there's not enough data to support it, or it's too opinionated, or it's just that there's nothing topical.
I had one Kelley professor who unfortunately went ahead and just, they said, I'd like to go ahead and write something. Then he went ahead and wrote something without talking to the editor, and it was completely in a different direction. Well, she'd also heard from that professor's research colleague on a paper. They knew each other, and that person ended up writing the article. But I thought the editor was very kind, and she said, well, let me send you the article that the co-author wrote, and you can forward that to him so he can get a better idea of what we're looking for. So they're very, they're very helpful and wanting to help us to understand the process and, avoid frustration.
See, this article was touched by 4 editors, so one of them must have gone on vacation in the middle. This got Jeff and our copy editor and our deputy editor.
So is anybody able to go in and see that, or do you have to have
This is-
Scott's password?
So this is just Scott's.
Good luck.
If you're going to write and you get your pitch is accepted.
So we could use this, like, for instance, to show faculty member, we could.
I'd be happy if you wanted to, though. So I mean, if we could do some screenshots or whatever, yeah.
And that's up to each, and even if they want to see the dashboard.
So there's not a dummy dashboard we could look at or something, or show them to use in our pitches to our faculty members.
No, but there's kind of where we could create, because I have access to everything, screenshots again that you could share.
Okay, great.
This is the author from Florida, when's the best time to read to your child. And you can see the variety from Scientific American, Smithsonian to World Economic Forum to Salon to the New Zealand Herald, Newsweek. Here's the Tegna chain. Weird things like Signpost. I think this might have been the first one that Philly.com took, which is the Philadelphia Inquirer. Now they're taking a lot more of our content and even putting it in print. The Patch are these hyper-local newspapers. So the New Canaan, Connecticut Patch or the Darien, Connecticut Patch. So they're even getting into those hyper-local. So that's, again, for our mission of reaching urban, rural, suburban, East Coast, West Coast, South, Middle of America. That's really what we're looking for.
Where are you located?
So our office is in Boston, our main office. About half our employees are there. But we do have 3 editors in DC, 2 editors at Georgia State University in Atlanta, 2 editors and a researcher in New York, an editor in Seattle, but then 8 editors in Boston. And then I'm technically I do. I live and work out of Pittsburgh at home. And our chief innovation and development officer is out of Connecticut. So we're really looking also to expand potential new hires to not be in Boston. Our former editor, I say former, she just left to go run the UK-US Fulbright in London, which is where she spent 20 years, so she wants to take her family back there. So I can't name who it is yet, but we have someone who's coming to be a new general manager and editor. So one thing we're going to discuss is, do we need the bulk of people in Boston?
Just trying to address your question. I think from the faculty standpoint, what we don't like about the media is that we have to write a bunch of different things to a bunch of different outlets. And here we're centralized.
Mhm.
So if you write one more thing that's not very comprehensive, it's 1,000 words, okay, then you can reach a lot of audience. So perhaps it's simplifying the message of what you needed to do to reach out a broader audience. So it's not that you have to talk to media, but talk to the conversation, because they are the channel.
Well, actually, you still need to talk to the media, but they're, just like we would with a news release.
Yeah.
When we reach out, when a reporter gets information that they're interested in following up on, they're following up from that information that they've gotten. So if they see something they've read in the conversation, that's the basis for the conversation they want to have with you.
Okay.
And so, you know, and if it, so that's, and in terms of, you mentioned people writing things, I know the media today, they like to do a lot of email interviews. They feel it's easier for them and easier for you, and also, of course, they're under much more pressure now. But you know, this is such a great tool because you control. Like you said, you're not publishing. They're not publishing anything until you approved it, and it goes to. I think the other thing to think about is the level of readership. You might have 10,000 readers, but they're not. They're a very sophisticated readership in a lot of ways too. So, you know, a lot of your peers will also see this. So,
And that's one of the keys is, we know you probably don't like interacting with reporters because you're taken out of context, you're misquoted. These are your words. Now it's collaboration with the editors to make it, you know, get that readability index over 80. But at the end of the day, these are 832 of your words. So you feel confident that it's your message getting out there, not someone else's interpretation of your message.
and let me add that, you know, we have the executive associate dean here. We have your chair. Scott's never been discouraged from writing for the conversation. So it's valued here, and I'm sure it's valued by the Jacobs School and Neurological and Brain Sciences as well, I would think.
I'm just wondering, of all the varied topics that you cover, are there certain areas that are the most successful, have the most, you know, the strongest readership?
So
Do you
for
differentiate?
defining success as the most number of readers, which you could, you know, we like to look beyond the numbers.
Yeah.
But the
Right.
ones that tend to get the highest number are the more curious things. And that's even what one of our science editors, Maggie, is looking for is how do you take everyday things to interest people and give them the background of like the 5-second rule. Like, if you ever want to see our most read of the week, and it's every 7 days, right here on our site has the most.
Okay. Yes,
And actually, last week, the most read was why losing a dog can be harder than losing a loved one. And that was written 2 years ago. But someone else picked it up, and it got another 50,000 readers that week. So it popped up to the most read. Another one we did that was food related was the science of double dipping. Again, it's biomicrobiologists. Everyone does it. Everyone questions, oh, is it healthy or not? You know, that's the curious part. Maggie gave a little more of an off-color example of why does asparagus cheese smell the way it does. Like it's one of those. Our Australian conversation, they have something called Curious Kids, where they have kids ask questions about. So I'd almost even look at that. What would a kid want to know? Could we cover that? Because you know that the broad audience from Sioux City, Iowa to again Bangor, Maine. You know, if it's interesting, those tend to get published and picked up. Our editors are craving for non-political stories. Even though we get the most pitches in politics, and we cover politics, they're just getting, I mean, they're still going to do what they want, but they want some fun stuff too. Because they're editors, they want to enjoy also what they're working on. So they really like the curious stuff. So how do you take your research and apply it to something interesting? And it's not just having a news hook. So I gave an example earlier that University of Nebraska has the International Center of Quilting and Museum on campus with professors. And we said, okay, now how can we get one of those professors to write? International Quilting Day is coming up March 16th. So there's the anniversary to look at. You've got the expert, but what are they going to write about? You still need the story. Is quilting the new coloring book to de-stress of 2019? Like, what is it that you can talk about quilting? Because we got the other two filled. So think about, is there a peg for an anniversary date or something, an event? Again, you're the expert, but what's the story behind it? And then why is the public going to want to know that story? So you got to make it interesting.
Or why at the end of
Yeah, so why is it important? Why is it important today? Why is it important to the general public? And then why you're the expert.
That's mirrored a little bit in the structure of a typical article too.
Yeah. So again, you have to stay in your lane. So if you're an accounting professor, you're not going to write about astrophysics. Even if it's a hobby, because academics still have hobbies and interests, and again, sometimes even more of an expert, even though it's not their area of study, just because it's a hobby, but we won't accept those. It's got to be your area of education and teaching and research. And that just helps keep our credibility.
Education and teaching and research?
Any combination.
So for the thing you said about co-authorship, so I'm a student, I'm on a paper with Cristiano. Would I be, is it that I'm a co-author on the article, I can write this, or he has to write this, and I'd be a co-author for the conversation?
You co-author together, so you work on the same one at the same time.
Okay, but I had to have a faculty member.
You're a postdoc, right?
Yeah, no.
Oh.
It's my first year, but I'm still figuring out what stats means.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I just found out it existed.
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, like, do I even have any place in this room? Is really my question.
Well, yeah, if you want to co-author with, and a lot of times we've seen it where the co-authoring is mostly the student.
Okay.
And they're kind of more lending their name and review of it to make sure and helping pull stuff. But then, so I'd say, think about the co-authoring and pitch the idea, and then the editors will work with you. Editors, if they're going to accept it, they're going to work with you.
Yeah.
The only reasons they stop working with you is deadlines have long passed, and it's again a month after Father's Day. Well, this is not really relevant anymore.
Yeah.
We've been ghosted before, where academics have just disappeared for months at a time and never answered an email or phone call. And we're like, well, we got to stop. Then they come back after a summer vacation no one knew about. And say, well, where's my article? I'm like, well, you didn't answer anything, and we never finished, let alone you approved it.
Right where you left it.
We've had times where, we like to say, 90%, we get over 90% approval on, was the editor good to work with? Was this a positive experience? We recommend it to a colleague. The negative ones have been where they didn't understand who we were and who the audience was. I had one at University of Albany who wrote an article, had a horrible experience. I was there in a meeting like this, and she said, now I know who you are. It makes sense they asked me the questions they did. And the editor pushed back on what I was doing. She said, I thought you were more of a if the Chronicle was a combination of a scholarly journal, that's who I was writing for and who my audience was. Now I understand who it is. It makes total sense. I want to do this now again. But the first time she was a naysayer, hated it, because why is this person dumbing me down and asking me these questions, things like that. So that's where we get into more rougher patches if they don't know who we are and who the audience is. And again, only 20% of our readers are on our website. So the audience really is any newspaper publication, media outlet, online or in print outlet.
And how integrated is this site now with your UK and Australia and Canadian operation?
That's something we're working on better. They do look at ours, we look at theirs. We have a global affairs editor.
Pretty separate.
So if you have a global affairs song, we do a lot on Venezuela and what's going on. But there's times she'll get pitches. She's like, you know what? This is a story about Africa, for Africa. I'm going to send it to my colleagues at TC Africa.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then we've seen also that they picked up our articles. And we, on a daily email, if you don't get it, you should just sign up for it. It's got this 7 to 12 stories that day, plus trending on our site or from our international partners, which we'll pull stories, and just like they take our stories and put on their newsletter. But that's how this one got translated to French, because the Conversation France picked it up.
The Conversation Crusade is only that line. Correct?
Yes.
And the message we publish and podcasts.
Yeah, and then what we've seen is a large increase in print publications as well. Now, what's funny, I think of these 68 articles published by Indiana newspapers. Not one was an IU story.
That's fine.
But IU's had, I think, a large number of print publications outside of Indiana that have picked it up. I know it's the Kokomo Tribune takes a lot, and one other. It's the small, medium to small publications. They don't have expert beat reporters anymore. So they're using this as kind of a national story, national analysis, then they can use local reporters to say, what's it mean to us? Chinese tariffs are talked about and everything else. We have an article on it, they run that, and then it's, okay, here's what it means to our farmers, here's what it means to our local businesses. So we're a supplement and complement to the local, to the medium to small publications, as well as, again, the Washington Post, who's not covering health and science the way they used to.
What is your acceptance rate like for the pitches?
It all depends. There's no, because each pitch is different, it's hard to say it, so accept 60% of all pitches, because it depends on the university at the time. So I know little tiny University of Richmond in Richmond, Virginia, pitched us 18 times in the month of November. We did 7 stories, 3 were rejected, and then the rest were deferred because they just weren't topical, or we had to go back to them and say, okay, there's an idea here, but this isn't right, let's think about something else down the line. That same month, we got 30 from the University of Florida. And again, there's, I think, 15 overall were accepted, but accepted doesn't mean they were done that day. I mean, some may not be published for 4 weeks down the road. So it's even hard to look at what's accepted and what's published in the same month, because some may take a month or 2 to finish up the process and be published.
How many do you see? Do you have any clue?
A lot. I mean, politics and society can get 30 a day. Religion and ethics, education, anything arts and culture, we don't get a lot of. So they're actually craving more pitches. And then we always like the science, health, technology ones, because those are a lot more, tend to be more interesting, you tend to get picked up. And that's why the politics ones are all great, but they're not always our most read, because you get a lot of outlets, they have their own reporters in that area.
Not now, I'm great from outlets, they want to do something else too.
That's why our editor's like, what's the fun part? So one of the things our senior politics and society editor is looking for, sounds morbid, but authors who can talk about political or societal figures that may pass away in the next 6 months or a year. Same way the New York Times, kind of gets ready. So we already have someone who's written some, and if Ruth Bader Ginsburg passes this year, we've got someone kind of in the wings. But it's also thinking about, okay, who's up there? Prince Philip could have just died. Do we have someone ready to write about him? She's also looking for constitutional law. And then anyone who can talk about different aspects of what may be in the Mueller report when it's released. So 5 or 6 different people to cover different topics that, to be ready, that's what she's looking for.
Yeah.
Of course, you mentioned the expertise and everything. So I'm currently in business. I have like a background in 2 degrees in special operations. I was at graduate level. Does that really matter, or is it just when they were PhDs?
You could probably, because it's a graduate as well, you could probably pull in some of that. That's one where we'd have to try and figure out what the story is, and the angle and what it's going to be.
I have to take off really quick. Those explainers that you mentioned, how does that process differ? Because I haven't thought about it.
They're quicker turnaround. And that's the idea of 400 words instead of 800 or 1,000.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So same process that you pitch, hey, would you like explainers?
Yeah, and those are also ones where our editors will be looking more. That may be an expert request of the media relations communications.
How do you find out what your editors are looking for if they're in their series of topics?
So every